Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3843 BN. Today's date is February 18th, 2026, and the title of the episode is Iran, Ukraine using the same deep state tactic? Trump will unite the country with a stroke of the pen. Hey, you know what's interesting? We've all seen the headlines about those miracle weight loss shots, but the 2026 data is officially in, and it's a wake-up call. A major analysis revealed that once people stop the injections, they regain an average of 60% of their weight within a year. Even worse, most of the gain is pure fat, but the muscle they lost stays gone, leaving them with a crashed metabolism and a body that's functionally older than when they started. That's why I'm obsessed with today's sponsor, GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of using needles to override my system, it uses clinically studied plant-based ingredients like metabolate to help my body naturally boost its own hunger control signals. I get the same fullness and fewer cravings, but without the scary side effects or the metabolic rebound. It supports my goals while protecting my muscles so I can actually keep the results for good. To celebrate Valentine's Day, get 50% off GLP-1 Elevate at trimwithx22.com. Every order includes a complete support bundle with a free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day money-back guarantee, and free express shipping on subscriptions. Head over to trimwithx22.com now to claim your 50% discount before it expires, or just click the link in the description. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, you can see that Iran and Ukraine, they're pretty much using the same tactics as the deep state players because they are the deep state players. And what is that tactic? It's delay. And think about it. Trump has been negotiating with Ukraine for how long now? And what does Zelensky do as his handlers tell him to do it? Delay the negotiations. Put it off. Yes, agree to have them, then don't agree. Then have them, then don't agree. And it looks like they're continually delaying the negotiations, but keeping it alive, making it look like he's all for it. The same thing's happening with Iran. You have the Iranian foreign minister saying, yes, we're going to get close. And then all of a sudden saying, well, maybe we're not there yet. And it looks like they're doing the same thing that's happening in this country. They're delaying. Why would they be delaying? Because I do believe they're hoping, and I'm talking about Ukraine and Iran and the deep state players, they're hoping that they have the ability to win the midterms. And if they win the midterms, then a lot of this is going to go away. That's what they think. Because again, if you have control of the House and Senate, you have a lot of power. You have the power to impeach. So once again, I think this is why they're delaying right now. Now, you can see Trump is building up the armed forces around Iran, flexing his muscles. And once again, what happens if news should break that shows that Iran was involved with certain individuals within this country, Clinton, Obama, many others, and they were accepting uranium for their nuclear power plants? What happens if other information comes out during this period of time? Because I do believe that Trump is going to put a lot of pressure on Iran, and you're going to see the people, since the people see the backing of the forces, this is going to give them the ability to remove the leadership in their country. And I think this is why Trump is bringing as much as he possibly can into this area to show the current regime and the people, look, we're here. You want to do something? The people want control of the country. The people want you removed. And you're seeing the protests across the country. And I do believe that maybe Trump will have to go in with certain forces. Is this going to be World War III? No, because I do believe that China and Russia, they understand what Trump is about to do. Remember, Trump does not make any moves without speaking to other countries, saying, listen, we're not going in there to start a war. We're not going in there to bring other countries into the conflict. We're going in there to assist the people to take back their country. Now, with Putin, I do believe Trump already has economic deals ready to go with Putin. They're just waiting for Ukraine. So Putin is not going to really do much. China, I do believe the same thing. They don't want a war. They don't want to have anything happen in this region. And this is why you could see that Starmer was trying to give away Diego Garcia, because, again, that is a strategic location because, once again, the United States uses this location to basically go into Iran if needed, because it's something like 2,300 miles away. So can we fly bombers into Iran? Yes. No. Think about why Starmer all of a sudden decided to say, you know something, maybe we don't need this island. Maybe we can lease it out. Maybe we could do other things. Was this done on purpose? I think it was, and I think Trump was calling him out on this because, again, they were trying to make it very, very difficult for the U.S. to do anything with Iran. Think about that for a second. So it looks like they're trying to use delay tactics, but again, this is not going to work. And think about what Trump has been doing. He's been battling everything that Obama has done from the very beginning. Obama set everything in motion to infiltrate this country, which we are seeing very, very easily today. He also set in motion the division of this country. He brought racism back. He masked it under DEI, infiltrated this country, and every step of the way, Trump is trying to reverse all of this. And I do believe in the end, as he exposes the crimes of all these people and shows the people exactly who they are, I do believe he's going to really take this to the next level. Because with a stroke of a pen, he can most likely unite the country very, very easily. And think about the midterms. Think about the elections. Think about an executive order. Because what happens when the people see that the majority of the people are not the Democrats? What happens when the people see the majority wants what our founders wanted, wants what Trump wants life, liberty, freedom? What happens when the people see this? And they see that there's only a small handful of people that actually want the far left agenda. Well, I think this is actually going to bring people together like we've never seen before. Because the proof will be in the pudding at this point in time, won't it? Yeah, it will. And I do believe this is how Trump is going to unite the nation. Yes, we also have the Epstein files. Yes, we have the money laundering system. Yes, we have the crimes against humanity, the crimes against this country, treasonous crimes. Yes, all that's going to come out. And that's also going to assist in uniting this country. Because you have to remember, this is not about changing a couple of things, making everything okay so we can win a couple of elections. This is about taking the control back from the deep state players, the criminal syndicate that they created. And think about what they took away from the people. They took away the money from the people and they use it for themselves. They use it for their agendas. They use it to push protests and riots. They use it for everything against the people. Think about what else they've done. They've used Epstein to control politicians. They used Epstein to control CEOs in Hollywood, dignitaries across the world. So this is about taking all of this back, taking that control and giving it back to the people because the control laid with them. And now we need to take it all back. We don't need installed people. We don't need control people. The money should not be laundered across the globe. It should be used here in America. And to take back control, we need actual people via elections to actually represent the people. That's what it means by taking back control, because you could see that the control that they took away. And basically, this is what this is all about. This is what the plan is all about. It's about restoring the control and giving it back to the people, having people actually represent you, represent your concerns, to do things that benefit this country, not certain agendas, not certain narratives. And I do believe that's what this is all about. And this is what Trump has been building upon over and over and over. And the only way to do it is to expose everything, expose the control via Epstein, expose the control over the money laundering, expose how they rig the elections and they install their people, expose who really controls the oil trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and whatnot, how they create terrorists to push us and get us to remove our rights. That's what Trump is exposing. That's what everyone is seeing right now, because this is what they've done for a very long time. And you could see he's breaking that brainwashing. He's breaking everything that people believed and now turning it all around so people could see the truth. I mean, when you look at what's happening with the Potomac, with the sewage that is just flooding into the river, you can understand why this is happening. Now, of course, these individuals are trying to blame it all on Trump. But when you look closer at it, you could see who's really to blame. Amuse put this out and said, D.C. Water dumped 240 million gallons of sewage into the Potomac in 1 month. After 2 years purging white staff to meet diversity goals, D.C. Water manager David Gaddis celebrated that he had ousted every experienced white executive based on the color of their skin. Today, D.C. Water claims that 70% of its employees are people of color, no mention of their qualification. And now you understand why we're having this problem, because they're the ones supposed to be managing all of this. Now, since they got rid of those qualified people, those people that are supposed to be brought in via merit, well, these people were removed and they brought in people that had no qualifications. And they said, listen, you meet our model of skin color and we're going to bring you in. And now they don't know how to do the job. And now we have this problem. And we see this with air traffic controllers. And what is Sean Duffy doing? He wants all the airlines and air traffic controllers and everybody else to prove that these people were hired via merit. Are they qualified to be in these positions? You're going to find out a lot of these people aren't. You're going to find out a lot of people flying your plane, they were never really qualified to be in that position. So we're going to see a reversal of that. If you look at the CDL licenses, you could see in Illinois, in California, and many other states, they were just handing them out. Nobody had real qualification. Again, they were supporting their illegal base, but you could see that once again, no one was really qualified to do any of this. And this is what they were doing to this country, breaking it down very, very slowly. And now you could see that they're the ones who are responsible for all of this. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that it looks like Colbert is in a little bit of trouble. And you have to remember these networks, they're not really networks, they're activist networks, and they pander to one side, and that's the Democratic side. And you could see that under the FCC rules, if they're going to give a Democrat candidate time, you have to have equal time. And you could see that Colbert didn't want to do this. So he made up this story that because of the FCC threat, they canceled his show. They forced him to do this. But that's not true whatsoever. Basically, they didn't want to have the other side on the network. So it turns out this was all a scam to help Democrats get the white guy elected over the black lady. What do they mean by this? Well, basically what they were trying to do is they were trying to remove Crockett. And this is why they brought on Tallarico. So they wanted Tallarico on. They wanted people to see him. And they wanted people to vote for him instead of Jasmine Crockett. Now, because they brought this person on, you had to have equal time for the Republican side. But Colbert didn't want to do this. Lee Wolf put this out and said, what's likely going on here is that Dems bosses needed something to get Tallarico past Crockett in the primary, and they cooked up this absurd publicity stunt that has nothing to do with Trump or the FCC. And CBS put out a statement saying, yeah, Colbert is the one who canceled this. Had nothing to do with the FCC. So the whole thing is fake as usual. And these people lie and they lie and they lie. And this is what they've been doing for a very long time. But now, since there's other ways to get the information out there, their lies are being now exposed to the public. And it's getting worse and worse for them. And when you look at all those students that decided to go up against ICE, and I think every single parent should get involved in this, saying, listen, if the school should not be telling the children, this is what you have to do, and you must go against ICE. Because again, it goes to their political beliefs, and you shouldn't be forcing them to do something that they don't want to do. And I think every parent should be complaining, And those people that did this, if there's a principal, vice principal, teacher, whatever, they should be fired. Because again, this is not part of the curriculum. Because again, if you're going to do one thing, you have to do the other. So you must have a protest and say everyone must be out there to protest for ICE. Does that make any sense? So instead, don't interfere with someone's political beliefs, someone's religious beliefs. Don't interfere with their sexuality because that's none of your business. And the parents should be at every single meeting saying this should never happen again. And if those people who did it aren't reprimanded, we want them fired. But what's very interesting in Oklahoma, in Mustang High School, Election Wizard put this out, Superintendent Dr. Charles Bradley suspended 122 students for truancy after they walked out of class in protest to ICE enforcement raids. And yes, they decided to skip school, and they should be held accountable to all of this. Now, the other thing that we could see is, remember the D's telling us that illegal aliens, they don't get any benefits? That's a conspiracy once again. They don't vote in the elections. They don't use anyone's social security number. They don't get any benefits. But what's very interesting is that the White Papers Policy Institute put this out and said Trump's policies are having an effect. 36% of illegals have stopped participating in welfare programs. 42% have avoided applying for a welfare program. Even 11% of legal immigrants, who also should not get welfare, have dropped out of the program. Awaken Outlaw says, hey, look, a whole bunch of illegal aliens have quit applying for benefits that Dems swore to us they didn't have access to. Once again, another lie. And we're seeing this over and over and over again. Now, Tricia McLaughlin, who's working with DHS, she has decided to leave her position. And that's sad to say. She was very good at debunking the fake news and the D's and everyone else, and it's sad to see her go. But again, this is what happens during the administration. Normally, the good people go because they get offers from other places, or maybe she's moving into a different position in government or someplace else. But again, you could see that the good people always take them. But it seems like we might have another good person coming in, and Nick sort of put this out. Katie Zachariah, a lawyer and staunch advocate for President Trump's deportation policies, will be taking over as DHS spokesperson following Tricia McLaughlin's departure. Katie has been a very vocal advocate for ICE, exposed how illegals are bankrupting states like California, and has repeatedly outlined steps which could be used to defund sanctuary cities across the country. Just recently, Katie was on Fox slamming California's attempt to force ICE agents to demask and called out Newsom and LA Mayor Bass for their brazen violations of the Constitution's Supremacy Clause. And she's probably going to be a very good fit in all of this. And we'll have to see how this all plays out. But the other thing that's very interesting, since the D's shut down the government and they're trying to put a lot of pressure on ICE, and you have to remember the One Big Beautiful Bill actually funds ICE right now. Yes, other administrative tasks in DHS, in TSA, and all the other places, they are affected. But the other thing that's very, very interesting about this is that Democrats who shut down the government right now because they're trying to put pressure on ICE, well, it looks like they're not getting the oversight that they wanted. Remember, the Democrats, they kept saying, we need oversight of ICE agents. We need the oversight. We need the watchdogs to watch over and see what they're doing. Well, because of the shutdown, the watchdogs right now, they're not being funded. So they're not watching ICE. So the Democrats just got beaten over the head with the unattended consequences stick. The Department of Homeland Security's internal watchdog has been forced to pause a significant chunk of its oversight of immigration enforcement as Democrats continue to withhold support for funding for the cabinet-level agency. And once again, they're the ones who are causing their own problems. You see, Trump, he made sure that if there was going to be another shutdown, which we knew there was going to be one in January, and yes, we had temporary funding, which brought us into February, he knew that they were going to try to use this as leverage. So what did he do? He put it in the One Big Beautiful Bill, which means they do not have the power, which means they are now trapped in all of this. And now they don't even get their oversight. And while all this is happening, the Epstein information is continually coming out. It's naming names. And yes, there is certain names in there that shouldn't be in there, or certain names that have been mentioned in there that have nothing to do with Epstein. And I do believe they did this on purpose to muddy the water, like we said before. And it would have been better if the DOJ went through this and removed all those names that really had nothing to do with anything. But again, you could see there were certain individuals that pushed and pushed and pushed this because they were trying to do what? They were trying to smear Trump, and it completely and utterly backfired. He's the one who actually coordinated and assisted the police, coordinated with the prosecutors, turned Epstein in, gave evidence, and he was the one that brought him down. Compared to all the D's, because they're the ones who were working with, involved with, Epstein donated to their campaigns. They are all involved in this. And all those people like Thomas Massey, Whoopi Goldberg, and many, many others who kept saying Trump, 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 it shows that their names are in the Epstein files. So once again, when you see Whoopi Goldberg's name appear in the Epstein files, was she on Epstein Island? Was she having sex with children? Is she guilty of a crime? Well, it seems like they're backtracking a little bit, or maybe really not. Now they're trying to explain, well, just because I'm in there doesn't mean I had anything to do with Epstein. Well, doesn't that go the same with Trump then? And think about this. They have certain rules. Oh, no, if my name's in there, I have nothing to do with Epstein. It just appeared in there. But Trump, oh, no, he had everything to do with Epstein. No. Once again, that's not how this works. And you could see what they've been trying to do this entire time. And think about it. Hillary Clinton, she's out there saying, oh, we had nothing to do with Epstein. There's no connections whatsoever. Well, we know that Ghislaine Maxwell was at the wedding. We know that Epstein visited the Clinton White House 17 times. Who did he meet with? Why did he come to the White House? Actually, there's a picture of Epstein with Bill Clinton with Ghislaine Maxwell. So let's see. Ghislaine was at the wedding, went to the White House 17 times, gave money for the Clinton Foundation, but there's no connections whatsoever. Yes, he flew on the plane. Yes, he went down the Epstein Island, but there's no connection. There's nothing. That's just an illusion. And once again, her story is falling apart. No one is believing it. And you know what people are believing? They're believing that she's a liar. And again, if you look at these people, all they do is lie. And when you start to look at the files, you could see good information, yes, is coming out. Now remember, all this doesn't mean that these are crimes. Because again, you need an investigation. You need the grand jury to look at it. And you have to then have the grand jury rule that, yes, there's enough evidence. This is a crime. So I wonder if there's certain information that's not going to be released in the Epstein files because maybe this information is being used with grand juries for an investigation to press charges. So when people say, I want to see the video, well, what happens if it's being used for the investigation? What happens if the grand jury has it? They're not going to release it, no matter what their act says, because it's an ongoing investigation. You would ruin the investigation. Why would you want to do that? Just so you could say, oh, look, I saw the information? That's kind of ridiculous. But with the information that we have out here, we can start to put, the pieces together to see who's been involved with Epstein, who's been working with Epstein. And when you see the investigations come out into the open, it starts to make a lot more sense. Kevin Bass put this out and said, the Reid Hoffman files. I OCR'd all 1.4 million documents from the DOJ's Epstein Freedom of Information Act request release. Then I tested every public claim Reid Hoffman ever made about Jeffrey Epstein. 13 claims, 0 true. This is the very first email, August 2013. Kaneko the Great says, Reid Hoffman set up an encrypted signal chat with Jeffrey Epstein and discussed some sort of $40 million financial arrangement. So once again, when you see this type of information, then you have the investigation information come out and you combine them, it actually shows the people that, yes, they are guilty. And what's very interesting, and by the way, Reuters put this out, Millions of files related to Jeffrey Epstein suggest that the existence of global criminal enterprise that carried out acts meeting the legal threshold of crimes against humanity. A panel of independent experts appointed by the UN Human Rights Council says they're going to investigate. Clandestine says, I need someone to pinch me. Mainstream media outlets like Reuters are now reporting on Epstein's transnational criminal enterprise engaging in crimes against humanity. The broader public are now getting disclosure on the deep state. It's real, and Epstein was part of it. Absolutely. How do you build the narrative up? How do you convince the people? How do you prepare people for the investigations and the indictments, which will include video, pictures, and whatnot? First, you show them who the players are. You show that, look, the mainstream media is saying, yes, there's something that's going on here. There's crimes against humanity. Remember, this is to break down the brainwashing and the non-belief that everyone has had for a very long time. They didn't believe that there was a sex trafficking organization like Epstein. They didn't believe that he was blackmailing people. They didn't believe that he had underage girls and boys where people were having sex with these people or eating babies or using their blood or anything like that. But now people are starting to say, wow, this is real. I never thought this was real, but wow, this is unbelievable. So this is the introduction, introducing the people to break down that brainwashing barrier. Some people might reject it. Other people accept it. But as more and more information comes out, it builds upon each other. And you can see the deep state players, they don't want a lot of information coming out. And this is why you see the EU and those EU nations pushing back on free speech. Listen to what Macron, I'm going to read it, but this is what Macron says. Marina Fall put this out. Free speech is a pure bullshit if nobody knows how you are guided through this so-called free speech, especially when it is to be guided from one hated speech to another hated speech. Well, the masks are off. Now, I remember Obama saying something very similar to this. We can have free speech, but we need the government to monitor it, to control it. That's what he's saying right now. We need someone to guide everyone through the speech. Let me translate that for you. Everything that they say is true. Everything that everyone else says is not. They will guide you through all of that, and they will classify that as hate speech, misinformation, disinformation, which means that information could be censored from you. That's what they're really saying. And Obama was saying that just a couple of months ago. He believes in free speech, but the government should have a hand in it. Oh, just like the government had a hand in it when we had COVID and the election rigging. Because I remember there was a lot of doctors, a lot of epidemiologists, a lot of individuals out there saying that, hey, what we're doing with COVID is absolutely wrong. I am trained in this. I have had 20, 30 years. Well, it's tax time again. Do you owe back taxes or have unfiled tax returns? Or have you filed every year but still keep owing? Did you retire and suddenly get hit with a tax bill you didn't expect? Are you a business owner with messy books and a balance you cannot afford? Maybe you pulled money from your 401k or IRA early and now the IRS wants its share. However your tax issue started, the outcome is the same. Your balance is not going down. Penalties grow, interest compounds, and many of you are about to owe again for this upcoming tax year with no plan in place. Stop what you're doing and call Tax Network USA. The IRS is not waiting. The IRS is enforcing collections through wage garnishments, back levies, and property seizures. They can even file for you without your consent. This is where Tax Network USA comes in. With over 15 years in business, there hasn't been a tax case they haven't seen or resolved. They specialize in tax controversies and help taxpayers nationwide get back on track by resolving back taxes and unfiled returns once and for all. Whether you owe tens of thousands of dollars or $10 million, their team has resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. They can do the same for you, but you have to call them now. They're offering a free investigation call with the IRS. After that investigation, they put a clear case plan in place to resolve your tax problem and get you back on track. This is about using your legal rights to take control before the government sets the terms for you. Do not wait for another IRS letter or or a frozen bank account. Call them at 1-800-958-1000. That's 1-800-958-1000. Or visit tnusa.com/X22 or just click the link in the description. Researching all of this, and what we're doing is not science. And those people were censored. I remember when people came out and said, hey, the elections were rigged. And the deep state players coordinated with the social media sites. This is coming from the Biden government saying, no, you're not allowed to say that. You are censored on the social media platforms. It wasn't the social media platforms doing it by themselves. It was the government. They were guiding the social media platforms on who to censor and who not to censor. So all those people that decided to question the elections and ask simple questions, they were removed from those platforms. Those people that went along with the election rigging, they were okay to stay. Same thing with COVID. So once again, you could see how this is all playing out. And you can see that Trump, he is showing the country right now that he is the leader of the country. He's the commander in chief, and he has control of the executive branch. And the executive branch can do certain things without Congress. He doesn't need the permission of Congress. This is why the founding fathers made the executive branch. This is why they made Congress. This is why they made the judicial branch, because these different branches have different powers, and some of these branches can't interfere with another branch, even though the judiciary is trying to interfere with Trump every step of the way, which they can't tell the president, who was elected by all the people of this country, what to do. It has to be in line with the Constitution, which it isn't. They are going against the Constitution. But just recently, what happened? Well, it looks like 3 more drug boats, and Bad Hombre put this out, and 11 narco-terrorists were neutralized. Trump decided, you know what? We're going to hit these people. Rand Paul and Thomas Massie are sobbing and holding each other tightly right now because they don't like this. Joe Lane says Rand Paul and Thomas Massie also claim to be experts on the Constitution, but still think Congress has more authority than the president when it comes to national security. Notice they haven't been able to stop Trump from doing anything. These corrupt charlatans have lost all credibility with everyone except Connick Media. Now they get mocked and lambasted on social media instead of celebrated. It's deserved. TDS is real, and it allows the people to clearly see who really wants to make America and the world great again, and who's trying to protect the status quo. And that's absolutely true. They don't like it because it's part of their system. And you can see Rand Paul is part of the system. You can see Thomas Massie is part of the deep state system. Yes, they have certain donors. They have certain people where they're part of this system. And they don't like what Trump is doing because it's going against that part of the system that controls them. Just because Rand Paul goes after Fauci doesn't mean he is controlled by a donor or someone else that cares about Fauci. But apparently he cares about the drug running, the human trafficking, the child trafficking out of Venezuela. Isn't that interesting? Now, the other thing that we could see is that it looks like Iran and Ukraine, it looks like they're using delay tactics with President Trump and his emissaries. And it seems that they keep saying, oh, yes, we're all up for a negotiation. Then they delay it. And they say, oh, it's just this one thing. Oh, it's just what other thing. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to delay this all the way up to the midterms. Now, I think Trump and the Patriots, they know this. They know that this is exactly what they're trying to do. And this is why Trump is continually out there saying, listen, Putin's already ready to make the deal. I've already talked to him. We're ready to go. It's Ukraine. It's always been Ukraine. It's always been Iran. If you notice, Venezuela didn't want to have negotiations whatsoever. And what did Trump do? He removed Maduro. Did he keep the government intact? Absolutely. Was there regime change? No. Think about what's going to happen in Iran. Right now, Iran's foreign minister says, yeah, we're speaking to the Americans, but this does not mean that we will reach an agreement soon. But the path has started. It's a delay tactic. That's what this is all about. And what's very interesting is if we go back a little bit in time, it seems that the deep state players, they were trying to lease out Diego Garcia, And it looks like they didn't want the U.S. to have that as a strategic area where we could launch bombers to go into Iran. And Trump is actually calling out Prime Minister Starmer. He says, "I've been telling Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom that leases are no good when it comes to countries, and that he is making a big mistake by entering a 100-year lease with whoever it is that is claiming right, title, and interest to Diego Garcia, strategically located in the Indian Ocean. Our relationship with the United Kingdom is a strong and powerful one, and it has been for many years. But Prime Minister Starmer is losing control of this important island by claims of entities never known of before. In our opinion, they are fictitious in nature. Should Iran decide not to make a deal, it may be necessary for the United States to use Diego Garcia and the airfield located in Fairford in order to eradicate a potential attack by a highly unstable and dangerous regime. An attack that would potentially be made on the United Kingdom as well as other friendly countries. Prime Minister Starmer should not lose control for any reason of Diego Garcia by entering a tenuous, at best 100-year lease. This land should not be taken away from the UK, and if it is allowed to be, it will be a blight on our great ally. We'll always be ready, willing, and able to fight for the UK, but they have to remain strong in the face of wokeism and other problems put before them. Do not give away Diego Garcia." And I think the deep state players, this is why they're doing it. It's to remove the strategic location for the United States to go into Iran. Remember, the deep state players, in the end, they don't want peace around the world. They want war in the end. And they don't want to give up their deep state layers. And this is what Trump is forcing them to do. So the distance from the U.S. military base on Diego Garcia to Iran is approximately 2,360 miles. This strategic location in the Indian Ocean serves as the key operating base for U.S. aircraft such as the B-2 and B-52 bombers, putting them within range to strike Iran while remaining outside the range of most Iranian missiles or drones. That's how strategic it is. Now, ask yourself a simple question. Why would this fictitious group want to take over the island? To force the U.S. out of the island? To make it so we don't have a strategic area where the Iranian missiles and drones and everything else can't reach it, but our equipment can reach them? Absolutely. They're trying to make it harder and harder for President Trump. That's what they're doing right now. Just like Ukraine and the EU is making it very, very difficult for Slovakia and Hungary. The other side media put this out and said Slovakia and Hungary completely halt diesel exports to Ukraine. No more fuel until Kiev restores oil flow through the Druzhba pipeline. Slovakia has been vowed to cut electricity supplies as well if Ukraine continues blocking transit via the Druzhba. Viktor Orban put this out and said the Ukrainians' decision to block oil deliveries through the Friendship pipeline to Hungary is blatant political blackmail. They're trying to pressure us to support their EU membership and hand over funds belonging to Hungarian families. In response, Hungary has decided to stop diesel fuel deliveries to Ukraine. Thankfully, Hungary has a government that doesn't bow to blackmail. We have taken all necessary steps to secure our supply, and we will not give in. I wonder who actually pressured Ukraine to do this. You think it was Ursula von der Leyen? Absolutely. And you can see they're controlling the situation because, again, they don't want peace there. They don't want to give up Ukraine because they're going to be using it for what? War later on. And I do believe this might be the sum of all fears scare event that we might see. Now, Trump might have peace before this, but you can see the deep state players, they're going to be holding out for a very long time. And I think once they realize that they have lost the midterms here in this country, this is when they'll push forward with their plan with Ukraine. Maybe they'll do a little bit of this before the midterms, maybe with cyber attacks in Europe. But I do believe this is what they're going to be using that event for. And this is why Zelensky is out there delaying and delaying and delaying. Trump knows it's Zelensky. He knows it's the EU. He knows it's the deep state players that are stalling. And Zelensky says Russia is stalling the peace talks. No, it's the other way around. And you can see that Zelensky is becoming very frustrated. And you can see he's becoming very angry. And this is all part of the act to do what? Delay the negotiations. He needs to delay the negotiations because he's being instructed to. And once again, you could see they're using the same tactic in this country. Because once again, what is the deep state players doing in this country? They're delaying Trump. How? They're using the judiciary. Every time he wants to deport or do something, they bring up a case. Somebody sues. Same thing with tariffs. Same thing with birthright citizenship. Same thing with election day. They sue and they try to delay this as best they possibly can. All the judges in the judiciary, they're delaying the deportation. Judge Boasberg wants Trump to bring back all the people that he flew down to El Salvador. It's all about delaying until the midterms. Because once again, they're going to give it their all to try to either stop the midterms or try to cheat in it. But both of those are going to fail, which means we're going to see the riots. And on top of that, they're going to try to bring us to war. And yes, to bring us to war, you're going to need nations to cooperate in all of this. And if you don't have the side that's going to retaliate, how do you start a war? If Putin doesn't retaliate, how does the EU start a war? How does NATO start a war? It's going to be very, very difficult. And what happens if there's certain nations that say, like Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, say, no, we're not going to go to war. We're not doing this. So you don't have Putin. You don't have these nations. All you have is the bad guys pushing a false flag to convince you that Russia or maybe China or any of these nations tried to do something. And if they're not cooperating, there's no war. Actually, if you look at the movie Sum of All Fears, that's pretty much what happened. The deep state players, they planted a false flag. They tried to blame it on Russia. But the president at the time in the movie was speaking to the Russian president saying it wasn't us. It was another faction that did this and tried to frame Russia to bring the world into World War III. So there was no World War III because Russia didn't go along with attacking the U.S. The U.S. didn't go along attacking Russia. It was called off. So we might see the same exact thing right now, but you could see Zelensky, he is feeling the pressure right now. And eventually, he's going to continually delay and delay and delay. Medinsky has argued, along with numerous Russian officials, including Putin, that the conflict's historical roots must be addressed as part of any settlement, especially given the bulk of the Ukrainian population in the East Donbass has always been Russian-speaking and looked to Moscow historically. Zelensky dismissed this approach outright, and he says, we don't have time for all this shit. So we have to decide and have to finish the war. You think he's delaying all this? We know at this point that the deep state players do not want peace. Yes, the Trump administration, he's going to continually push this to the very, very end. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that Italy has rejected to join Trump's peace council. And it's not for the reasons that people might think. It's not because Meloni says, oh, I hate Trump. She doesn't. The country's constitution bars it from taking part in any body controlled by a single leader. So this puts them in a very difficult position. We also see the Vatican, and Marina Fowle put this out. The Vatican will not participate in the Trump Board of Peace. Secretary of State Cardinal Parolin. There are clearly some points that leave us somewhat perplexed. There are critical issues that we need clarification. Now, once again, I do believe this Board of Peace is going to most likely morph into something else. Yes, in the beginning stages, Trump is going to manage it all. And what is he actually doing? He's taking the power away from the UN. Actually, Secretary of State Marco Rubio already said the UN can't do anything. They haven't ushered in peace anywhere. They haven't done anything. They haven't negotiated peace, while Trump has negotiated peace all over the place. So yes, the Board of Peace is now competing with the UN. And eventually what's going to happen is Trump will remove himself from the Board of Peace, and you'll have members of other states handle the Board of Peace. Now, this is going to be outside of the UN, and eventually the Board of Peace will expand and have peace around the world. I do believe this is what Trump is planning to do, which then you'll see other nations, they'll be able to join on. And I do believe in the end, maybe the UN will be dismantled in the end, just like everything else that the deep state has set up over time. Remember, all these institutions that you're seeing, the World Health Organization, the UN, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, and all these institutions and all the NGOs. Remember, all of this was set up by the deep state players to maintain control and bring us into their one world government, because that's really what they wanted in the end. They wanted a government like the EU, an unelected body, taking the sovereignty away from the countries and putting all the power in the unelected. That's really what they wanted in the end. And you see, they've been trying this here in the United States. It's called socialism. It's called dictatorship. And you could see in certain cities, this is what they've been pushing. Actually, if you look at New York City, this is exactly what they're pushing. And what's very interesting is that Mamdani has brought back homeless encampment sweeps, turning on campaign promises after backlash over cold weather deaths. Plus, he says that they're going to have to access the rainy day fund and actually start to tax people. He's going to increase property taxes. Again, we're seeing this here in New York City. We're seeing this here in Virginia. We're seeing it in all the places where these individuals came into power. They lied during the elections. They told people what they wanted to hear. And as soon as they were elected, they went ahead and pushed the socialist dictatorship woke policies. So out in Virginia, what are people seeing? They're seeing electricity costs go through the roof, and they don't even understand what's going on. So once again, you could see that all of these places, they're just following in the footsteps of the deep state agenda. And the people of these states, the people of these cities, they're definitely seeing that, hey, maybe we shouldn't have voted for this person. Or maybe they should get rid of the cheating systems in those states and change things. I think that's next on the agenda. But every step of the way, you could see the deep state players, they're just trying to delay and go against the Trump administration every step of the way. Libs of TikTok put this out and said Obama appointed U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnes just ruled the gang member and alleged human trafficker Kilmore Garcia cannot be redetained by ICE. Boy, they're really using him like a pawn. And what they're trying to do is they're just trying to push their agenda to delay everything. Now, the other thing that we could see, and we could see how the deep state players control the FISA court, because we see that the individual that was just appointed, Jennifer Daskal, who is going to advise this secretive court, she helped create the Biden admin's Disinformation Governance Board. So now she's going to be on the FISA court. No, Trump did not appoint this individual. She was appointed by the FISA court, the FISC. Hans put this out and said, this is shockingly corrupt appointment. Though hardly unique in the history of FISA court whitewashes. The court once put David Criss, Hillary Clinton's campaign national security advisor, in charge of fixing the FISA abuses that were themselves created by the Clinton campaign. So Jennifer Daskal was appointed as amicus curiae advisor to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court by the presiding judges of the FISC and the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court of Review. The presiding judge of the FISC at the time of her appointment was Anthony Trenga, appointed to his district court position by George W. Bush. And the presiding judge of the FISC-R was Stephen A. Higginson, appointed to his circuit court position by Barack Obama. So basically, you could see that they're putting their own people in these positions. And again, are they going to do the right thing? Are they going to follow the rule of law? No, of course not. So once again, we need to take control of the judiciary. We need to remove these people. We need to dismantle or redo the secretive court. So once again, we do not have control over all of this. And once again, you could see that that's what this is all about. Trump has taken control over the executive branch. Each individual who is now in control of their agency, they have restructured it. These agencies are now working for the people. And eventually, we will get to the judiciary. But again, a lot of this is out of the executive branch purview. So to remove or gain control of these different agencies or the different branches, you need to have control of the House and Senate. And the only way to do that is to have an election. This is why it's so important. And this is why Trump is using everything in his arsenal to make sure that we win in the elections in 2026. We'll be getting to a lot more about this a little bit later. But first, you could see Doge. They're now in all the different agencies, and they set up systems to track where all the money goes. And that's what this is all about. Because I do believe in the end, they'll probably use a blockchain type of system to keep it completely and utterly transparent, to keep everything traced. Because what are the deep state players? What have they done? They made sure that nobody could trace any of this information. But now we have Doge. They're tracking all the money, and they're making it completely and utterly transparent. So if it's all transparent and you see where this money is going, does it make it easier to have prosecutions? Absolutely. That's what this is all about. But you can see the deep state players, they know what Trump is doing here. They know they have to shut down the elections during 2026. So what are they doing? They're preparing for this. Mike Shelby put this out and said, Indivisible, the country's largest protest organizer, and remember, they get their money through NGOs from Soros, and this organization, they go ahead and they coordinate the protests or the riots across the country, is gearing up for No Kings 3.0. Their next big national day of action is when? Coming up pretty soon? Probably, yes. As of today, he says, there are 600 individual protest events being organized. It will almost certainly grow to 1,200 to 1,500 plus events nationwide for Saturday, March 28th. You should attend your local protests and see who's out there. So once again, they're doing this every step of the way. So we've said this before. There's most likely they're going to do protests in the spring, in the summer, and then the fall, because they need to keep this in the people's minds. They need people to continually see this. And as people are watching that and seeing that how they're going to basically try to shut down the election, because that's really what this is all about, what did Kash Patel just reveal? Remember, most of these people are paid. Remember, all this money's flowing in. Those people that you see out in the streets, they're paid for. Yes, you might have some brainwashed people coming in, but most of it, Antifa, the protesters, they're bussed into all these different locations and they're paid. And the mapping for Antifa has been done a long time ago. And it looks like Kash Patel, he was on the Dan Bongino show, just let everyone know that a major discovery, and Eric Doherty put this out, has been made regarding the funders of Antifa terrorists. Wait until you see what's coming in the next month or two on the funding streams related to this. Now, the timing of this is very, very interesting, because in March, they're planning on another protest, which means most likely there might be some riots that happen. There will be Antifa out there. There'll be paid protesters. So now we're going to see this type of funding. The timing is very, very interesting. And it looks like, even though we have a shutdown, it looks like Trump is going to be doing the State of the Union. And the Democrats, and Amuse put this out, have basically decided they're going to have their own State of the Union. Because you have to remember, the Democrats have their own national anthem, their own flag, and now they have an alternate State of the Union. So basically, they're trying to create another country. Isn't that what's called an insurgency? Yes, that's exactly what they're doing right now. But in the end, all of this is going to fail, because what is Trump doing right now? He's showing people the truth. He's showing the people the deep state. It's a crash course in the deep state. He's exposing it all quickly. People might not think it's happening quickly, but it is, because you have to remember, a lot of these people did not believe this. Clandestine put this out and said, you might have noticed it, but Trump and his team have been giving the public a crash course on the deep state. The JFK files were Deep State 101. The message was that JFK was killed for trying to expose the monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that had embedded itself within our government. JFK was assassinated because he was trying to expose and destroy the deep state. Then a few months later, Tulsi came out with the bombshell report that Obama and his intelligence heads manufactured the Russia hoax as part of the treasonous conspiracy. This was the next phase of the disclosure for the public. First, they were shown that a deep state existed via the JFK files. Then they were shown that the deep state still exists today and is trying to get rid of Trump, just like they got rid of JFK. Now we're on to the Epstein files. Now the public are being shown that the Epstein was connected to the Democrats, and he was also connected to the global elite, like the Rothschilds in the House of Saud. Now we're wading into expert territory, like a 300 to 400 level class. Now we're on to transnational criminal organizations and crimes against humanity. Understanding this phase of disclosure would not have been as feasible without the other steps first. In conclusion, I think we are being briefed in a calculated fashion, not a random one. I think the public are slowly being downloaded on the depth of the corruption. I think we're methodically going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of disclosure. I think there is a method to the madness. We're on a timeline, which means the timeline has a projected endpoint. Patience. It is working. Absolutely. And you can see that Trump, he wants the SAVE Act. Now, the SAVE Act might be bait because he wants to show the public who's for having voter ID and who's against it. And again, by getting people to say, yes, we need voter ID, yes, we need the SAVE Act, but having the D's and certain rhinos say we're not going to pass it, I do believe this gives Trump ammunition to then bring in the next phase of all this, which might be an executive order, which we'll be talking about in just a sec. But you could see, and C3 put this out, Mitch McConnell is a no vote on the SAVE Act. Over 90% of his constituents would vote yes, but his owners don't want it. He can barely walk, he can barely speak, no clue where he is, but he doesn't want the SAVE Act. And once again, you could see this is all being done on purpose, which we'll be getting to in just a sec. But again, you could see Trump now, he's building upon his endorsements, and he's building upon the economy. He's building upon voter ID, one-day voting, because again, he's giving us all the ammunition that we need to win the midterms. If we don't have the SAVE Act, if we don't have the one-day voting, he wants to make sure that the people have the ability to override their cheating system. And what's very interesting, he's put out more posts on those individuals that he has endorsed and shows that these people get a huge boost. And this is from Indiana. Indiana SD 38. The current polling, it shows that 39% want the incumbent, 14% do not want Brenda Wilson. They want Greg Good instead. Trump endorsed Brenda Wilson, and it looks like Greg Good went down to 20%, and Brenda went up 59%. When you look at Indiana SD 39, before Trump endorsed Jeff Ellington, he was at 24%. Eric Besler was at 24%. Trump endorsed Jeff Ellington, and he went up to 47%, and Eric went down to 18%. So basically what he's showing you here is that, yes, when he endorses the candidate, they skyrocket over the other candidate, which means he has the power. He just needs the people to vote for these individuals. So he's going to put out, and he's been putting it out on Truth, all the people that he's going to endorse. Because again, he's setting everything up to make sure that we win the midterms. And think about it. If we go back in time and we go back to 1996, Chuck Schumer, and Trump put this out, wanted IDs and Social Security cards to stop illegal immigrants from voting. Why would he want that back then and not now? Because now he's controlled, not controlled by the people he represents, controlled by the deep state players. So now he doesn't believe that anymore because, again, the D's don't put him into office. The cheating system does. And what's very interesting, the deep state players are trying to convince everyone that the talking filibuster is a terrible idea, and they try to explain why it is. But once again, the talking filibuster is what we actually need. And we don't have to change any rules or anything like that. Sean Davis says, This is patently false. It indicates that you simply don't understand the subject matter. Lee and others are not arguing for any rules changes. They're arguing for the opposite, using the existing rules to force an actual filibuster and exhausting the opposition by requiring them to talk to maintain the filibuster, as opposed to allowing them to obstruct without doing any work. It's okay if you don't actually understand set of rules, precedents, and procedures. Most people don't, but you owe it to yourself and your readers to do a better job on the topic going forward. Happy to connect you with actual experts at any time you're interested. Rachel Bovard says, for the millionth time, the talking filibuster isn't a threat to the filibuster. It is the filibuster. Also, Mike Lee isn't arguing for rule changes to do it. None are required. So once again, they're arguing about something that is not true. And this is what they do. They create something out of thin air, and they try to convince you that they're trying to change something that is already in place, that nobody needs to change. They're the ones who changed it. And this is what they do every single time. And what's very interesting is that Bongino had John Solomon on his show. And Solomon made an interesting prediction. The Storm Has Arrived has put this out, and then Trump re-truthed it and says, Trump will soon unveil evidence that foreign powers meddled in the 2020 election, which will result in John Thune ultimately caving on the filibuster, and the Save America Act will get passed. Oh, isn't that interesting? So wait, Trump is using the election fraud to put pressure on the rhinos. I think Donald Trump is going to change the narrative in America. I think he's going to change some senators' minds. He's going to start revealing some of the intelligence that was kept from the American people. And we're going to see that our foreign adversaries have monkeyed around with our election system more than we knew. And I think when senators realize their state could have been targeted, there's going to be a different debate in America. And this is absolutely true. And think about what else the election fraud is going to do. Not just pass the SAVE Act, if that's possible, which hopefully it will be, and I think it might be. Trump is also going to use the election fraud, which is the rigging of the election, which they overthrew the United States government, overthrew the duly elected president. He's going to use this to say it's a national security threat. Think about that for a second. Now, you just can't have one thing. You just can't have the SAVE Act. You just can't endorse people. I think what Trump is doing, he's doing all of this to make sure, no matter what happens, we win in the elections. So if you have the people endorsed and the people know that these are the people that you have to vote for, if you get the people out to the polls, if you have voter ID, if you have one-day voting, if you have paper ballots and you don't use the machines, we can win the election. So if you remove the paper ballots, and let's say there are a couple mail-in ballots that come in, you could still override the elections because you have the people voting, just like we did in 2024. And this is why Trump is going to be using the economy. Right now, they looked at all the poll numbers and they realized, once again, the economy is the number one issue. And Susie Wiles and other top Trump team members just hosted a Capitol Hill midterm strategy session with nearly 100 power players, and the number one issue for Republicans will be the economy. Housing affordability, health insurance transparency data, lowering drug costs, tax cuts, banning stock trading for Congress. So basically, Trump is going to be using the economy. And think about what he's done. In 2025, he set the economy up. He built the foundation. Now in 2026, he's building the building. You're going to see the results of him doing all this work, planning it out, making the blueprint. Now, as we go through this year, there are going to be more jobs. Fuel costs are going to go down. He's going to be removing a lot more taxes, giving the buying power back to the people. He's going to be making health insurance a lot cheaper. All the people in this country are going to see this. They're going to benefit from all of this every step of the way. So put all this together. He's building a multi-level strategy to make sure no matter what happens, we're still able to win the elections, either with one-day voting voter ID. If we don't have that, we can override their cheating system. No matter what happens, we have the tools, the ability to win, especially when you tell people, look how great the economy is. And as we go throughout this year, it's going to get better and better and better. He knows it. This was planned a long time ago. Clandestine put this out and said, I spend exactly 0 seconds caring about projections from Polymarket, Kalshi, etc. What the public think will happen and what actually happens are two completely different things. Trump told us there'll be voter ID either via the Save America Act or via executive order. If this is true, it is, then the Dems are going to lose the midterms in a catastrophic landslide, to the point where the public will have no choice but to accept that the Dem support is largely manufactured via election fraud and manipulation of public perception. The Dems manage perception with phony polls and projection sites. Everything is fake. Perception and reality are not the same. The GOP will win the midterms by a landslide because things are now in motion that cannot be undone. Trump is already fully committed to saving the republic, and this is what must happen for the public to wake up. Once the public sees how the Dems are engaged in widespread election fraud, the veil will be lifted and Trump will have not just the ability, but the responsibility to hold the Dems accountable for hijacking our nation. It must be done. And I think Trump is letting us know that his number one strategy is the overthrow of the United States government, the overthrow of the duly elected president. He saved this to now. He's always had this information. He's always had how they did it, but he needed it for this moment. And he put out two posts. The first one that we read already from Storm Has Arrived, when he talked, John Solomon was being interviewed by Dan Bongino. The second one is by Pepe Deluxe. And there's a meme. It says, I will be the one to shut it down. So basically, Trump is letting us know that he's going to be using an executive order, and he's going to say that the elections, the cheating in the elections, the cheating and the assistance from foreign government, this is a national security issue, which means everyone's going to have to show ID, prove that they're a citizen. And it's going to be done like the SAVE Act. Now, the SAVE Act could be passed. Remember, the SAVE Act doesn't say that everyone must use voter ID when they come to the polls. The SAVE Act right now says in 2026, everyone must register using a passport or the birth certificate, marriage certificate to show that your name changed. And you could see the D's and the brainwashed D's. They're saying, well, how are we going to do this? I don't have my marriage certificate. Remember, there are many different levels. So if you got married, your birth certificate never changes. It has your original name. It has the town that you were born in. It has the date. It has that information. It never changes. Your information changes later on when you become married. When you become married, you have a marriage certificate. It links your old name with your new name. This is how you get your driver's license. This is how you get your passport. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's all fine and good, but what happens if I lost my marriage certificate? What happens if I can't find my birth certificate? Well, you could always get it from the state. And then people say, well, what that costs money. You see, now you're disenfranchising those people that can't spend the money on this. Well, if you can't get any of this, you can then just use your passport. People say, what happens if I don't have my passport? Well, you can use your real ID. Now, some of the real IDs say you're a citizen. Some of them don't. So that there's a question there. But what happens if you have no paperwork whatsoever? Well, there is something in the SAVE Act that says this is what every state must do. They must set up a process where people can actually sign an attestation where it says, listen, I can't find any of this, but I'm signing this under penalty of perjury, affirming that I am a U.S. citizen and I'm eligible to vote. And they will submit this. And maybe later on, they can submit their records if they have it. So state or local election officials will use this. They will approve this. Now, again, if you lied, you're going to go to jail because, again, you're signing this under perjury of law. So once again, there are different methods to do this. And again, if you have a passport, you don't have to worry about anything. If you have a real ID and it says you're a citizen, you don't have to worry about it. If you have a real ID that doesn't say that, yes, you have to bring in your birth certificate. Most people have their birth certificate. Actually, most people have this documentation because, again, how did you get your driver's license? How did you get your real ID? How did you get a passport? You've done this all before. But for those people, and I know there are different situations where maybe there's the elderly, where they can't go to the offices and get that, or they can't travel, they don't have the funds. The states are supposed to set this up. Again, this has to be passed first. They could set this up where it allows people to sign this saying, yes, I am a citizen. Now, people are going to say, well, what happens if the illegals do this? Remember, if they do this, and remember, these things have to be approved, that you just don't sign it and say, okay, now I can vote. The election officials will approve it because they have to get certain information, other information that you have to provide. But there's always ways to get this information. Now, remember, the SAVE Act, like we said before, only tells you that you have to register and prove that you're a citizen. It doesn't say that you have to bring your voter ID until 2027. Trump, I do believe, once the election rigging information comes out and shows that the elections were stolen in 2020, I don't even think Trump is going to go that far. I think what he's going to do, he's going to show in multiple states that the elections in certain counties were rigged. So there is the possibility, and it's proven that, yes, foreign countries, people can actually vote who are not citizens of this country. I think once people see that, I think people are going to say, yeah, you know something, maybe we need to make sure, maybe we need to pass this. And yes, people will agree to Trump's executive order because people already agreed to voter ID. Later on, I think Trump then will show that, look, on a grand scale, they actually use this to overthrow the United States government. I think he won't give all the information out right now, just enough to convince the rhinos, the people of this country, that we need a law like this. And this is not going to disenfranchise anybody, because if you have a license, if you have a real ID or a federal ID, you need to bring this information to these offices. This way you can get your unemployment, you can get your welfare, you can buy alcohol, you can fly on a plane, you can get a job, you can pick up your order maybe at a store because you need ID. If you're going to buy liquor, you need some ID. If you're going to take your child out of school, you need ID. How do you get this ID then? So what they're telling you is fake, phony, and false. And yes, there's going to be certain individuals, it's not the majority of the country, but certain individuals that will not have this information. And that's why they've given different ways of getting it. And you can see Trump now is setting all of this. And with the stroke of a pen, he's going to unite the country. How? Because when you show that the D's are not the majority and the Republicans and the conservatives, they are the majority of this country, this is how you unite the country. Because think about it. This entire time, people thought the country was divided. You had the Democrats on one side, the Republicans on another. When you see that the D's don't have the people, they have a very small percentage, and most of the people are conservative, or maybe the Democrats are saying, listen, I'm on the line here, or I'm leaning towards the right a little bit here. They're going to vote for common sense. And Trump has been using common sense every step of the way. So Trump, he set it all up, and I do believe with a stroke of a pen, he's going to show the entire country we're really united. We're not divided, like Obama has been saying, like the fake news has been saying, like the D's have been saying. Actually, they're the ones who have been pushing division. Trump has been pushing for the country to be united. And I think by doing this, he's going to show this country and the world. Why? Because the Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.